And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of news stories this week covering a lot of different angles. We've got new e bikes from Priority, from Segway. We hit up the Micromobility America 2024 show. Let's see what else. A whole bunch of interesting news to cover this week. So we're going to start it off with, I believe, Priority's new e-bike. Is that right, Seth?
That's right. Priority Bicycles launches new 28 mile per hour Priority Current Plus mid-drive Gates belt e-bike.
This one has me super excited. I've had a Priority Current, the original one, for several years. It's like kind of my go-to everyman's premium bike. You know, this is not something that would compete with like a Electrek or a Rad. This is a nicer bike, and now they've updated it to make it better than ever. So to cover the basics here, this is largely a sort of commuter style e-bike. It comes with a Gates belt drive, a 500 watt mid-drive motor that has, I think it's 110 Newton meters of torque, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, very, very torquey. It's got an internally geared rear hub. There are two options, either a Shimano Nexus 5 if you want a 5-speed, or the Enviolo CVT, a continuously variable transmission, which is basically like, you know, an infinite number of gears within a 380% range. Stepless shifting, I believe is what it's called. And then obviously a bunch of other nice parts. You know, you've got your hydraulic disc brakes. You've got a bigger battery now. It's, I believe, 720 watt hours. So a big bump from the original 500 watt hour. Another major update here is that the bike now comes with a throttle, which if you're selling an e-bike in the US is almost a requirement these days. So many people, you know, just don't even look at a non-throttle e-bike. So, you know, I think it was sort of a must for a Priority if they wanted to expand the market of this bike was to include a throttle. Though I will say, having ridden this bike a lot already, it pedals so nicely that I find myself not really using the throttle that much. You know, it's nice to get rolling. It's nice if you're heading up a hill. If you forget to downshift when you come to a stop, it's, you know, nice to get that extra power while you're downshifting. But the bike just pedals so nicely with that torque sensor and the Gates carbon belt drive that I just really don't use the throttle that much. And if anything, it makes me really happy because I'm getting a lot more pedaling in than I normally would because the pedal experience is so nice. Now, this is not a cheap bike in any sense of the word, but it's not, you know, like a crazy expensive Reese and Moeller either. It's priced at either $32.99 or $34.99, depending which of the internally geared hubs you go with. The Shimano 5-speed is the more affordable version. I tested the Enviolo, which I really like because, you know, with 5 speeds, depending on the incline, you might find yourself sort of between comfortable cadences. Obviously, you adapt to whatever the gear is, but with the Enviolo, it's just so nice that you decide exactly what cadence you want, and you can just dial it in to literally whatever your favorite gear ratio is. So I kind of like that one, but you can get out $200 cheaper if you go with the Shimano Nexus 5. So to me, this is basically just like a cool way to get into higher end, higher quality components and just like nicer design bike without having to spend like specialized prices or the, you know, the higher end Trek prices. Of course, companies like those do have more affordable models, but if you compare like the parts on this to those other bike shop brand bikes, you'll find that this is definitely going to be a better deal. You're going to save a good amount of money this way. So I've been really, really happy with the bike. Now it's not perfect. There were a few things they left off, which to me was just kind of strange. As someone who rides in a city, I couldn't believe there wasn't a bell on it. Like I use my bell all the time to like tell people to get out of the bike lane and, you know, let other cyclists know I'm coming up behind them, that sort of thing. And so it was annoying that like you spend $3,500, you got to put your own bell on it. It's also not super lightweight. I think it's 55 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, which isn't terrible for an e-bike, but you know, it's not a lightweight bike. I can carry it up one flight of stairs, but I wouldn't want to carry it up a few flights of stairs, kind of thing. So it's not perfect, but considering it's competing in a much higher end market, to me, it's a really nicely done update to what was already a really good bike. I think that this one, if someone is looking to go higher end, they've had Electrek or a Rad or a Ride One Up or something, and they just want to get higher quality parts, a mid drive, belt drive, that sort of thing. This would be a very interesting one to consider, in my opinion.
I have a lot of questions.
Let's hear them. I hope I can answer them.
All right, so it's a class 3, right? I
Yeah,
noticed
yeah,
you were
28 miles an hour.
even higher at some. I mean, you were going around buses at like 30. It felt like on a couple of those, the video clips here. So it's pretty easy to get up to high speeds with the 500 watt. I'm assuming that's nominal. There's probably a higher peak wattage on that mid drive.
Yeah, they don't say what the peak is, but I mean the 500 is definitely underrating it based on, if you put it in the highest power level, which I almost never use. Like it's kind of unnecessary in my opinion, the highest power level.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like you were just, at a very like easy speed, just like zooming around
Yeah.
limes and like phew, gone.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
pedaling. And I would pretty much
yeah,
had it in level 3 out of 5. Like to me, 3 out of 5 is like the sweet spot. That's not even, its final form.
right. So that's great. So basically, you have all the power you need, and then some. So in that rare case where you're on the street or whatever, and you want to kind of avoid pissing off cars, you can kind of just ride with the cars at close to 28 miles per hour. That's great. So the price, you said it's $200 cheaper with the Shimano hub.
Yeah, so it starts at 32.99.
That's what I
Certainly
would have
that's
guessed.
an investment. It's not an impulse buy.
Right. And the mid drive is a Shimano, right?
I'm not sure what the midrive is. It's not the Shimano Steps motor.
Oh, okay. But it's
Yeah, I'm
not
not
like
sure
something we
which.
recognize like a Broza or a Bosch.
No, no, it's going to be one of the other. I mean, at this point, there's like 20 mid-drive makers, so if
Right.
it's not one of the European ones, it doesn't look like the usual suspects.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seemed Bafangy with the controller stuff, but yeah, I appreciate that. And the rear hub shifter, you had the Enviolo. Did you check out the the base model at all, or was this kind of the only one you got
No,
to check?
for this one, I only tried the Enviolo, but maybe a year or two, I did test the previous version of the Priority Current with the Shimano Nexus 5, and it is a very nice hub. Both of them, you get the benefits of internally geared hubs, which for me, it's like being able to shift at a stop, and also the low maintenance. You're not like fiddling with the derailleur or catching it on stuff, but the biggest difference between the two, in my opinion, is that with the Nexus 5, I feel like I'm sort of adapting my riding to whatever the closest gear is that's comfortable to me.
Mhm.
Whereas with the Enviolo, it adapts to me, is sort of the feel difference for me.
That's cool. And my thing is like if mid drives are going to continue to be kind of like the high end of e-bikes, the hub's got to come down in price and also stay, keep that functionality. So I'm just wondering how good the Shimanos are getting in the hub area. But
Yeah, and there's starting to be more options too. I was just at Bafang's headquarters in China. That article and video will be coming soon. But they have their internally geared hubs now that not motor hubs. Well, they have that as well, but they have a two, a three, and I think a 5 speed automatic internally geared hubs that they make that you compare with
automatic,
their motors. Yeah, so
interesting.
it is there's pretty interesting. Yeah, I tried their 5 speed. There's a little bit of lag, like you pedal up faster and then you got to wait just a second, then you feel it adjust. I would
Yeah.
have personally shifted a little sooner, but it is
Mhm.
kind of it is kind of neat. And then you have no wires, no cables, no
Right.
shifter. So there's starting to be more options in the internally geared hub space.
I wonder if they would do a, automatic, but also you can manual override or something.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal, but I think their goal is no outside inputs. They don't need to run wires or cables.
Right.
I think they're trying to
Well,
cut that out.
yeah, I mean, this is an interesting space. Love to see them, priority kind of innovating here and getting higher end components. I mean, this is basically bike shop bike um, stuff, and even better with the New Vinci.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what Priority is. Like they started as a Manhattan bike shop, like they're bike shop people.
yeah, that's what
But they
174 Hudson is their thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so like you get the bike shop culture and like devotion to quality, not just like churning out bike-shaped objects, but they also operate as a direct-to-consumer company. So it's kind of the best of both worlds situation.
Yeah, I'll have to go check them out next time I'm in the city.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Segway is launching a wild-looking 100-mile smart e-bike and new U.S. bike division.
Yeah, these are so there's actually two electric bikes coming from Segway. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce them. I think it's the Safari and the Cyber, but it's spelled with an X. So hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They are both actually electric bikes, even though they kind of look like more than that. They have functional pedals. The Safari is more of a sort of step through commuter looking, almost like futuristic Dutch bike kind of style. Whereas the Cyber is very much more of a motorcycle, almost like a beefed up Super 73 styling. But they both have pedals and are designed to be electric bicycles. The I think it's the Safari has an option of up to 100 miles of range. Now, of course, these are the pedal assist, lowest power ranges, but we often say, have that and you get sort of the real world laying on the throttle type range. So if they're saying 100 and on is 50 would still be great. But both of these bikes, super futuristic looking, very different from what we're used to seeing in the electric bike space. And what's interesting here, to me at least, is that Segway isn't just rolling out like some bikes and boxes that they're shipping from, um, you know, Qingdao Port or something like that. Like they're actually moving into the U.S. with an e-bike division. They've hired a bunch of like former Trek and other industry bike folks to head up their U.S. e-bike division. They're going to have a U.S. headquarters. Like they're really investing in becoming an e-bike company in the U.S. as opposed to just rolling out more drop shipping products. Just rolling out another scooter or another like hoverboard or that kind of stuff. I believe we're going to have more information on these after CES, I think is what they were saying. For now, we have the images, we have a little bit of range information, but we don't really know too much more about the tech specs here, other than what we can glean from looking at the images. The only other real number that we have is Segway has said the price is going to be under $3,000.
Hmm.
Hopefully that doesn't mean $2,999, but so we know that's the ceiling. And so $3,000, just like we were looking at with Priority, $3,300 to $3,500. I mean, that's you're getting into sort of the lower end of premium range, right? Like these are not what you would think of as Segway, as their scooters and whatnot, as being sort of like entry to mid level. These are probably going to be priced closer to the like beginning of the more premium market. So I would expect to see some significantly more premium components here. Not cheap suspension forks, not cheap derailleurs, quality brakes, that kind of stuff. We do know there's going to be a decent amount of embedded tech. We don't know what it is, but Segway has been talking up how these are going to be like high tech bikes. And so that's probably going to factor into the pricing there. There's probably some serious connectivity built into these, maybe some GPS tracking, that sort of stuff. So that never comes cheap. They want to get their R&D money back there. So that'll factor into that potentially up to $3,000 MSRP. But for both of these models, they could be interesting additions to the market, and particularly that Cyber, the one that's kind of Super 73 looking. $3,000 is already a like Super 73 price point. So the kind of people who pay good money for moped and motorcycle style e-bikes probably won't blink at a $29.99 dual battery. I think this is the single battery version we're looking at here, but it comes with up to dual battery
Yeah, you can
electric
see where that
moped
would
style
go.
bike. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to follow these. It could be in a couple of weeks we have some more detail. I really wish I could tell you actual tech specs. I want to know how fast, how far, all the good stuff. What motors they're using. But until then, we just don't know too much more about them.
Yeah, it's kind of the timing is interesting right before the holidays. It's almost like a hater drop of information. So like, oh, you're like, oh, I was going to buy a Super 73, but this looks pretty sweet. Maybe I'll hold off. Um, but
Diabolical.
yeah, so the X brand is pretty interesting. It's not just I'm going to say they want it pronounced like a Z, like Zafari and Zyber, but who knows really. Um, but I noticed it's not just the brand, but also like the lighting. Um, on both bikes, they have front and rear X's where the lighting is, so it's kind of part of the brand strategy there.
Yeah.
Um, the bikes look cool. I noticed the commuter bike. It looks like full suspension.
Right.
That rack on the back is kind of connected to the main body, so that there can be some. It doesn't look like a ton of movement, but it looks like there can be some movement there. It looks like a pretty solid all around bike. It does have some knobby tires, so the assumption is like it can be taken off road. Um, pretty solid, like looking build. It's obviously not going to be a light bike. You can tell that battery is going to be monster sized, but good for them. Like it's a an area that you know there's a lot of demand for bikes like this. And then if you go to the was it Zyber, and obviously I don't want to say that there's like Cybertruck vibes, but it kind of feels like that did not go unnoticed. Um, the big question about this bike is like, is it going to be class 3, or is it going to be like a moped? Are you going to be able to go 35 miles per hour on this thing? And I imagine that that's not going to be the case. Segway being a law-abiding company, I feel like this is going to be one of those Super 73 type bikes that looks like it can go really fast, but probably is going to not be above 30 miles per hour. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the way they positioned these was they referred to them both as, like electric bicycles and not, this is our e-bike and this is our moped, or, this is our e-bike, this is our motorcycle. So it really seems like this is a, moped in form only, and they're going to keep it limited to class 3 operation.
Yep.
And even like, Super 73, I believe those can be fairly easily unlocked to off-road mode. I doubt this one would even have an off-road mode because they're probably going to play it a little safer.
Yeah. Well, it looks good, and we don't know when these are actually going to drop, or we're going to have previews
I
of these.
Yeah, I think at CES we're going to have more information, like all the missing specs. But in terms of actual rolling out of the bikes, we're going to have to wait until later in the year.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. Put me down for a review if they're available. Let's move
Definitely.
on. California's long delayed $2,000 e-bike rebates are finally here, and I think we had a subsequent article that they were gone.
Yeah, they were here for a good time, not a long time. So California's been spending years getting a voucher program rolling. We've seen this work for a while in other states and other cities. Denver's like sort of the poster child for having like a great, generous, frequently updating voucher program. And so, despite it being a roller coaster of watching this roll out, a lot of mismanagement issues, this week, California did finally launch their program. It basically offered a $1,750 base voucher, and that was only eligible for residents that made up to 3 times the federal poverty limit, which is not that much. I mean, that's 3 times it is, I think, $45,000 per year for an individual. But if you made 2.25 times the federal poverty line, you got the full $2,000 voucher. And this was not like towards a certain percentage of the bike, whatever. Like it was just here's $2,000. If the bike costs 2,000, great. If it costs 3,000, we covered 2/3 of it, kind of thing. Whereas other programs often they'll cover up to like a third of the bike or up to a half, etc. So this was really designed to help low income riders who would otherwise not have been able to afford an e-bike, not just help you like pay for a segment of it. So the program was designed like several others we've seen, where they had a opening time where once the applications opened, everyone would be sort of in this like 40 million way race to submit the application. That was on Wednesday, I believe, on the 18th at 6 p.m. it opened. And what we heard from several of our readers was that the site pretty much crashed almost immediately. Like 5 or 6 minutes in, the application was largely unusable. And then several people said that by 15 minutes, like they just couldn't submit it anymore. We talked to a few people that said like, they tried for an hour. And so surely the server crashed with that many people sitting there refreshing at the same time. And out of around 1,500 e-bike vouchers or so, those probably went in seconds, because it sounds like within minutes the site was unusable and applications couldn't be submitted anymore. Look, I don't want to this is a great program, right? Like, I don't want to like poo-poo what is a great idea and a great initiative, because any way that we can get, more people on e-bikes, and especially helping lower income people achieve transportation independence. Like, it's not just getting people out of cars. Some people don't have a car or a way to get around. So this is really an issue of transportation independence. So like, I don't want to put that down, but I feel like there are ways that this program could have been improved to sort of solve a lot of these problems. For one, this method of like opening it at a start time and just like a free for all for who can type in their information the fastest doesn't seem like a great option. If it was like rolling admissions and then every month or so it was drawn out of a lottery of all the people that submitted applications, it just seems like that would be a lot more fair. If you've got arthritis, there's no way you're going to be typing as fast as, like a 20-year-old and being able to submit your application in time. So things like that, it just seems like that would be a no-brainer. Next, 1,500 vouchers. It's great that there are any, right? Like, again, I don't want to, bite the hand that feeds people that need e-bikes, but California's got like a $300 billion budget. Like, we can't find more than $3 million for e-bikes there. It's California. Come on, this should be like low hanging fruit, right? Like, if there was anywhere that was gonna help people get, like light, efficient, affordable electric vehicles, it should be like a city on a hill kind of situation.
Yeah,
So
and also like California has tons of problems with congestion, with pollution. Like, take some money from the the EPA budget or the the CARB thing, or there's just so much good that can come out of this, that 1,500 seems a little bit okay.
exactly. Yeah. And so, and there is still a little more money left. I think of this $3 million initial round, I think that was out of 7.5 million total budgeted for the program. So it's assumed that there will be additional rounds. It has not been announced. There's no details on whether there will be, and if there are, when they would open. But there does appear to be money left in the e-bike voucher budget that was created for this program. Perhaps the fact that it hasn't been announced yet means that there's still room to sort of fix some of these issues that I think presented themselves in this program. So, hopefully that's something that the organizers will be considering. At the same time, like, we've seen this play out in many other cities and states that have done this. So like, I feel like California could have done some homework here and avoided some of the growing pains of a program like this just by learning from the mistakes made elsewhere. But hey, they didn't ask me.
Yeah, and they didn't ask me either, but if I was California, I would do things a little bit differently. So some ideas, maybe pick like 10 bikes to choose from and say, look, we're going to foot, a percentage of the bill, a big percentage of the bill, but not all of it. And the reason is like you want to have some buy-in from the people. And I know low income folks don't have a lot of discretionary spending, but like if you're putting in a little bit, and I'm not saying like, half of it, I'm saying like maybe 70 or 80% California could cover, and then 20% would be the buyer. Then also, I'm certain there's probably a black market for these vouchers, and people just called up, got a voucher, and they're selling it to somebody who's going to buy a bike. Like, this kind of stuff happens. If there's a percentage, like if they cover 80% and it's on specific bikes and it goes to specific people, it's less likely that these are just going to be sold on the market. I mean, even after getting the bike, like you now have a $2,000 item that you didn't have before, and if money is tight, there's going to be, like you might want to sell it. And maybe $2,000 buys you something else, clothing, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that I think could be done better. I don't know, all the answers, but there's got to be a better way. And you led the article with the electric or and you have the electric cargo bike in here. Like, what if instead of $1,500, $2,000 rebates, there were $4,500, $700 rebates? So lowering the number, kind of forcing people to focus on lower cost bikes, like under $1,000. This is their cargo bike, so it's obviously not under $1,000. But like, I don't know. It seems like a $2,000 budget is kind of high. Unless, I mean, cargo bikes you obviously need for hauling groceries and stuff like that, or kids. So that I understand, but it a lot of things to consider here. So yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens if there are future rounds, and how the either requirements or the stipulations might change in the future moving forward.
By the way, is this a 10 ways at the top?
No, that's actually, it looks like it. It's a Ride One Up Roadster V3.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm
it looks very
currently,
similar now that you mention it.
yeah, I'm currently reviewing a 10 ways bike that's amazing and cheap, and that would also be a perfect bike. So that'll be coming soon if it ever stops snowing. All right, let's move on. The strange logic behind New York City's push to force license plates on electric bicycles.
Yeah, so this has the potential to be super controversial. It's very much a like keep your hands off my bike issue. But in New York City, they are currently debating a bill that would require license plates for light electric vehicles like e-bikes and electric scooters. I do not believe non-elect or non-motorized vehicles are covered, so it wouldn't be like pedal bikes. It's not a done deal. It does have some support in the city council or whatever the government body in New York City is, but it's not like a done deal yet. But the reasoning behind this is it's being pitched as a public safety issue, that you've got electric bicycles zipping around. The bill is actually named after a woman. It's called I think the Priscilla bill. So it's named after a woman who was killed in Chinatown a couple of years ago after being hit by a rider on an electric bike. And the goal here is ostensibly public safety, like having a way to make electric bicycle riders accountable, or at least trackable if they commit offenses, that sort of thing. So it's not like a car without a license plate that can hit someone and just drive off. It's on its surface, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? Like it would be good to have accountability. But to me, that logic just falls apart when you consider what the real road dangers to public safety are. And that's obviously cars and trucks and SUVs. But if you look at the numbers in New York City, you're talking about, an order of magnitude, tenfold fatalities from people being hit by cars versus people being hit by an electric bicycle. And an even higher difference if you compare the like serious injuries caused by both of these, because most of the time, if someone does get hit by an electric bicycle rider, it's not comfortable. You probably get knocked over, but you get back up and like maybe you've got a skin knee or something. These are very rarely fatal accidents or even cause serious injuries, unlike all of the very large cars and trucks and SUVs, which are very frequently serious injuries and often fatal. It's not that New York City isn't doing anything. There are programs designed for road safety, educating drivers, etc. But it seems like if we're going to be putting all of this effort into creating new laws and a significant burden on cyclists, not to mention the monetary burden of having to register and get license plates, that the easier method here and the one that would have a much bigger impact on public safety would be to work on the problem that we all see every day, which is deaths of pedestrians and cyclists from vehicular traffic, cars, trucks, and SUVs. So I'm not on principle against the idea of licensing e-bikes. I just think that if we're going to do that, it should be because we've solved all the other bigger problems first.
Yeah, and in Tel Aviv, where you're at, they have a license for micromobility vehicles, right?
Yeah, so just this last August, it was instituted. It was left up to cities. So across the country, cities can decide whether or not to require registration. And so here in Tel Aviv, we all have to register our e-bikes and our e-scooters. It's seems to have gone pretty smoothly. I would rather I didn't have to. It's
Right.
like, $20 to get the license plate, which I would rather I didn't need it. But there are upsides as well. Like now my frame number is registered in a uh, system that if my bike is ever stolen, the police can look at the frame number and say, oh, this is Micah's bike, like if it's ever
Right.
recovered, whereas that never would have happened before. Does mean you have to think twice about, like rolling through a red light because you'll probably be on the traffic camera if you are. I haven't heard of any, automated tickets going to cyclists the way they do to cars, but it does seem to have worked. Now, in that case, we probably have the same amount of e-bike traffic as New York City, but with like 100th of the population or something. So, there's a huge number of e-bikes compared to the small size of the city, and that's why it finally became an issue. In New York City, I just don't think the critical mass is there yet to warrant it. Eventually, hopefully it is. Hopefully there's so many e-bikes that we're like, wow, these things need to be identifiable. But at this point, like you're just hassling all these delivery riders by giving them extra hurdles. Like
Right.
these are already
And people who are considering getting an e-bike, they're like, well, I would get an e-bike, but I don't want to go through all the, hassle of getting a license. Like you want people to want to be on e-bikes and
exactly,
micromobility. Like you don't want to put up any roadblocks there. Um,
exactly,
I
especially
guess
not this early.
right. A free license plate, I guess, would be nice. A free registration would be beneficial, perhaps. Um, it just seems like we're going to spend all this energy on registering bikes and creating this whole system. Why not spend the money like making better bike lanes and bike access and keeping pedestrians and bikers separate? It seems like a weird place to put the energy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, finish up the congestion pricing, like make that a
Yeah,
thing
that
and then use that to pay for some of this.
yeah, that has been so. I'm usually outside of New York City, and the congestion pricing thing. The governor is just it just feels like they're slow walking that, and it's just a really really frustrating situation there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Here are the coolest e-bikes and more we saw at Micromobility America 2024. Oh, that rhymes.
Yes, we were just at Micromobility America 2024. Actually, finally met Carl in San Diego, who is often one of our viewers and commenters. So I met him at the
He's there
show.
now.
Yeah, so saw lots of really cool different micromobility options there. The show is definitely smaller than it was in years past. I think we all know it's been a tough time in the last couple of years for micromobility. The volume that we saw during the pandemic years just hasn't been sustainable. So there weren't as many companies there, buying booths. But we still saw lots of cool stuff. I'll try to run through some of the more interesting ones. All the big name companies were there. Venton, Rad, Electrek, that sort of thing. But also lots of other just interesting vehicles. Several electric motorcycle companies were there. Electric scooter companies, e-bike kit companies, theft prevention companies. Like a really interesting smattering of really cool things. I think that one thing that Micromobility America has done well is sort of combine a very diverse group of ecosystem companies. So not just vehicle makers, but sort of everything that goes along with that into a very small space. So it's not a Eurobike size show. It's never meant to be like this massive industry show, but they do a great job of bringing a very diverse show of different types of companies to like a smaller 2-day event. Here we can see just a bunch of the different, like here's the Land Moto. This was actually my first chance to see the Land Moto district in person, which is a nice commuter spec electric motorcycle. I think it gets up to about 70 or 75 miles an hour. So, like take it on the highway a little bit, but really meant as like a sort of urban suburban commuter motorcycle. Rivid was there. Similarly spec'd bikes, very different design, but same idea of like a commuter motorcycle. A few different e-bike kits. There's this really cool lock. It was like handcuff locks for electric scooters that I actually grabbed one of those. So I'll be doing a review of that interesting handcuff lock. There was this fascinating company that I'd never seen before called Shandoka that they make conversion kits for a bunch of vintage, I don't know if it's technically vintage, like 1980s motorcycles. So if you've got like an old Yamaha or Kawasaki or something that like the engine is bad, they make kind of a bolt-in electric conversion kit. I think here they are, Shandoka. So it's like a cool way to take older motorcycles, especially ones that might not be running well or at all, and electrify them. The other interesting thing, I was talking to the founder and the guy that designed and patented the kits he makes. Because these are so old, the motorcycles themselves, they're grandfathered under like very old safety laws, which allow you to just be very creative with the bike. Like as long as you have a headlight, a tail light, and a mirror, you're basically within the law. So you just
Wow.
have so much freedom with the design. Said he's seen people with like a little dental mirror, just to like meet the requirement.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was a very interesting chance to check out so many different things. It was my first chance to try a VMAX scooter for any period of time. They actually let me borrow one for the 3 days I was there in LA. So that was a great opportunity. I'm going to be riding that up as like using a scooter to get around LA. The summary is that LA is a terrible place to try and get around, but it's a little bit better if you have a scooter or an e-bike with you. But yeah, just a really cool gathering. Oh, one other thing that I think the show does a great job of is bringing in really interesting speakers between panels where they put a bunch of like CEOs or other industry bigwigs together, or they'll do deep dives. Here, Levi Conlow was speaking. He did like a half hour sort of fireside chat about the state of the e-bike industry, largely focused on Electrek, which seems to have been doing pretty well. But it's always fascinating to be able to hear from these kinds of folks and to be able to ask questions and get the access that you normally wouldn't have. Not that these folks are up in ivory towers, but you rarely get the chance to like talk to the big wigs that run these e-bike companies that we all ride. So very cool chance to see all of that in one place. And I'm really glad that Micromobility America's or Micromobility is doing these shows. They also have the Micromobility Europe that they do each year. So without Interbike or something like that in the U.S. anymore, it's good to have these other smaller shows that still provide opportunities like this.
Yeah. So this was in Costa Mesa.
Yes.
That's a nice. Was Jamie around?
Yeah, yeah. I met up with Jamie at the show.
Great. What did Levi say about the market in general? I know Electrek is doing pretty well, but what was just like the high level? Like, are we getting a comeback, or is it going to kind of be what it is for a while, or what?
Yeah, well, you got to kind of look at it from his perspective, which is that things seem to be going well for them.
Right.
Electric is doing quite well, but I think the thing that he sees as the biggest issue facing the industry right now is probably the uncertainty uh, floating around with tariffs, right? That like we just don't know what's going to
Right.
happen January 20th or 21st, and so a lot of companies are, not making big decisions yet until they know what the landscape is. A lot of companies are already moving production out of China into other cost-effective countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, those types of places
What
that
about Mexico?
also
Is
have.
that I know China is moving some stuff to Mexico. Have we heard of Mexico happening at all?
I haven't heard of it for e-bikes at all.
Mhm. Okay. Um, it's always nice to see Electrek doing well. We've been fans for a long time. I think our original affiliate codes were like 1 and 2, so um, I guess they picked the right media outlet to be friendly with, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, this is great. And are they affiliated with the Dutch Micromobility
Yeah.
organization?
Well, they do the Micromobility Europe show in Amsterdam. Is that the one you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, so it's the same team. They have
Okay.
like those are their two big yearly shows, and then I think they have a online. I think it's Micromobility World that they also do. It's kind of like the third one, but that's a like an online show each year.
Okay. Well, I'm a little bit saddened to hear it was a little smaller this year. Hopefully next year it grows again.
Yeah,
All right. Moving on. Our last story is Rad Power Bikes and Upway now let you trade in other brands for a new Rad e-bike.
this is a really cool partnership. So Upway, I know we've covered them before, and Seth, I believe you visited one of
Yep.
their locations, right? So Upway, for anyone who's not familiar, is sort of like a retail platform, but for either used e-bikes or sort of overstock, like basically new e-bikes that are selling for an incredible discount over their original MSRPs. So it's like a marketplace where you can find really good deals on very new or lightly used electric bikes. And Upway has a great system where it's not just like going on Facebook Marketplace and buying some rusty or who knows what happened to a bike. Upway, they put hands on these bikes, they tune them up if they need to, they're cleaned, inspected. Like they do a really good job of making sure these are good bikes, and it's the kind of experience you'd have buying a new bike just at a much better price. So that's sort of Upway in a nutshell. Did I get that right, Seth, from your experience with them?
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting you mentioned the Facebook Marketplace. They told me that they were actually part of their model was kind of combing through the local Facebook Marketplace for low price e-bikes. Maybe they would just go and lowball some people and see if they could get some stuff. But as you mentioned, they take used bikes. I think like I don't know what their current situation is, but when I saw them in Brooklyn and I looked around their showroom, I would say the vast majority of the bikes that they had were bikes from companies like Specialized and Trek. I don't know if Trek was there, but the bike shop brands last year before models that were just, they couldn't sell. So Upway was basically taking new bikes, tuning them up, getting them ready, and they have that, the huge box that they send, and you basically just have to tighten the. I mean, everything's put together already, so it makes a ton of sense. Upway's model. They're bigger in Europe, but they're just kind of coming to the U.S. over the last couple years. But a really good idea. And then obviously Rad joining up with them makes a ton of sense. A great way to kind of make the trade-in of the bike easier. And that's, nobody wants to have Facebook Marketplace people lowballing you and coming over to your house and checking out all your stuff and all that stuff. So I love this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of like combining the best of both of these companies. So Upway is like the market for dealing with used bikes, or like you said, the overstock bikes. But they've teamed up with Rad now to leverage that trade-in ability that Upway has. But instead of trading in and just getting some bike from Upway, you can actually go to Rad's retail locations and bring in your e-bike. It can be any brand. They were like kind of careful about talking about that too much because I don't think they want to seem like they're just trying to cannibalize all these other companies. But that is the idea. You bring in your e-bike, you can trade it in, and then you can get a Rad at a discount based on whatever the trade-in value was. And they've got their own system Upway of using all these factors to determine whatever the fair trade-in value of like hundreds of different models of e-bikes is within their system. And Rad's got a bunch of retail locations, I think 7 or 8, maybe something like that, spread out all over the country. So it's not like there's only 1 or 2, or you can only go to their Seattle location. They've got a lot of Rad retail stores that now anyone can bring in an e-bike and get a big discount on a Rad, which is good because Rads have sort of floated up in price depending on which models you're looking at over the last few years. So a discount there would definitely be helpful, especially for their plus line, the Rad Rover Plus, Rad City Plus, Rad Runner Plus, all those like nicer, more premium Rads that are pretty expensive. With a trade-in discount like this, you could get something for a pretty good price here. They didn't share sort of details on what their algorithm is for determining trade-in value. I have no idea if it's like really good, or if Upway is going to lowball you, but hopefully it's pretty fair. They do offer really good prices on the bikes they sell, so it makes me wonder how much they can give someone when they come in to trade in, so that there's still enough profit margin for Upway. But
Yeah,
maybe some of those,
that's been
yeah,
the kind of the I don't want to say the problem, but that I've heard that people are a little bit disappointed. But when you think about it, not only are they taking the bike off your hands, not sight unseen, but like they probably don't know, there's some unforeseen issues. Then they're fixing up the bike. Then they are boxing up the bike, and then they're shipping the bike. So by the time, you're not going to get basically what you can sell it for on Facebook Marketplace. That's just not realistic. But this is easier, and you're paying for that ease. So
yeah. And I
it's
think
just,
like if I was Upway, I would much rather have the overstock bikes from stores anyway. So like it's probably a hassle for them to have to deal with trade-ins. So to be able to offer that
yeah,
service and make it easy for people, there is something to that.
it's a lot of extra legwork. And it's also, just as a side note, it's kind of interesting seeing Rad kind of moving into the Pedigo space of having stores and dealing with that. Like they're also moving their prices northward. Something we've talked about with Pedigo, like how Pedigo's bikes are great, but they're priced in a way that they're not quite, they're not even close to what you could get drop shipped. But how do you afford the stores? And I know there's been some internal squabbles at Pedigo about the direction of the company and the bikes. And it's, Rad is obviously coming for their lunch a little bit in certain geos. So it's just interesting to see the evolution of the bike store space, the bike space, e-bike space, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is very cool to see, and I think that there's probably a lot of people that will be able to make good use of this, especially folks that have an older bike sort of sitting in the back of their garage that they don't really use anymore.
Totally. All right, let's we're gonna talk to Carl in San Diego in the comments here. If anybody else has a comment or a question, now is the time to throw it in there. But you did get to meet Carl, so we should see what he has to say. When you learned shorthand, yeah, I'm old. X equals trans, so he used it a lot in EE classes. So there's a trans Safari and trans Cyber. I don't know that Segway is aiming at electrical engineers, but maybe. Some aspiring filmmaker can now make a documentary about how not to launch an e-bike rebate, poster child for mismanagement by government contract instead of just letting the government do it directly. That rebate is 2 years late for California, all because the contractor sucked at this. I believe California rebate was 10 million announcement in 2021. Then he doubled it 20 million a year later when nothing had been done yet. Micromobility, I spoke to a battery fire expert witness and government official about establishing a universal charging standard. Hey, that's great. I can say it wasn't on their radar at all.
That was a roller coaster right there.
I know. I was like excited for a second. Like, oh, this is what we want to hear.
Like
And
saw
then
all the emotions in Seth's face at once.
right. Well, you put it on their radar, Carl, and we appreciate that. And
Yeah.
maybe you can forward us their contact information so we can yell at them about a standard. I would say, Mike, I don't know how you feel about this. Like, let's just do the barrel. Let's just do the barrel 48 volt. Come on. Like
Yeah.
anytime,
And
anytime I get one of those, I'm a little giddy. I'm like, okay, I have 35 chargers for this thing.
yeah, exactly.
And then when there's something that's like, weird, I'm like, oh, now I got to think about where this thing's going to be and all this stuff. Like, we got a standard, guys. Let's just, it's not the best. There's like lots of problems with it, but like it's there. Like most people are
See,
using it. The cheapest stuff is 48 volt barrels. Let's just do that.
but even there, and not to like get into the weeds on this, but there's like 3 or 4 common barrel sizes. There's one that's the most common, it's a 5.5 by 2.1, but there's like 3 or 4 barrel sizes that are kind of common and like 10 actual barrel sizes. And they they do get mixed up. Like even Jamie, he lost his charger and I recommended a charger for him. And like we looked at the port, and I was like, I think that's like the common barrel charger, but it wasn't. It was the next size.
Well, I'm using a hay bike, and here up in Vermont, and it's been great in the winter. Well, relatively good in the winter, and the snowboard, the electric snowboard I had, has this amazing, like I think it's like 8 amp charger, and I was like, oh sweet, I can fast charge the hay bike with it, and it's like it works most of the time, but it's just I think the barrel might be shorter or something. So like if there's snow or something, I can't get the thing all the way in and it doesn't charge.
There's so many problems with what you're
I
saying.
know. It's like, come on,
And then
guys.
they salt the roads, and then I get the salt in there.
I know. It
Oh,
is. I
man.
mean, we got to do something. I mean, even USB-C. Screw it.
Yeah.
Let's just go USB-C. We know, everybody knows that. We've got 16 chargers sitting around the house. It's slow, but like they go up to 200 watts, right?
I think the normal is 100, but there is a standard for up to 200.
Right. So maybe that's where we end up. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's
All right.
doable. Like, we 15 years ago we had like 1,000 cell phone charger. Like it's
Right.
doable. We got there. We
Yeah,
can do it again.
you can do it. All right. CAR broke down the funding for their e-bike incentive program so far. It was funded 3 separate years for what was now $31 million, but they only showed 13 million of application of that funding, only 8.5 million for bikes.
Yeah, and I
Really
don't understand the funding because like right now I have their website open. I'm in the facts, and the question is how much funding is available, and they write 7.5 million is available for e-bike incentive vouchers. So everywhere you look, there's a different number.
I mean, here's like, if you want to make this happen and fast, pick 5 bikes, electric, rad, whatever, $1,000 bikes. Say, look, we're going to give you $300 bikes we're going to give you $1,000 bikes for $300 or whatever, 250. If you meet these requirements, so you're not going to have as many people applying because they actually have to pay some money. They're going to get a great bike for a great price. They're going to be invested in it a little bit. You're going to have a choice, between, fat or tire or whatever. Like, I feel like that is we could do this in like 3 weeks. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you should get on the horn with California.
Yeah, I do well in bureaucracies and government things, so I'm sure that would just be real smooth. Joey Garcia, I really appreciate you guys. Where are you guys from? I'm from California. I'm currently in Vermont, but I'm typically outside of New York City. Micah,
And I'm in Tel Aviv, but I'm sometimes everywhere.
sometimes everywhere. Yeah, we make him put a flag on his Slack channel just so we know where he's at and what time zone he's in. All right, Carl's back. We need a BMS smart charging standard. That way we eliminate the battery fires. Yeah, I mean, I
And
guess,
we'll tag that in with the connector. We'll just two at once, guys.
yeah, it should be like a car charger. I mean, it should be like a car charger, but not, the car chargers are way too much and way too big and all that. That way the BMS tells the charger what voltage and charging curve it wants. I don't know, man. I just 48 volt or, 50, 52 volt coming in. Give me some random thing. Give me some amperage between 2 and 10, and let's just call it a day.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
mean, like what Carl's talking about, it would be nice. It's almost like the AC charging now, like with a car charger, where it's just a fancy extension cord, right? Like a 1772
yep.
plug. So if chargers were small enough and robust enough to be on e-bikes, that'd be kind of nice because then the universal charging port is just an extension cord.
Yeah, and then if Bosch wants to continue with their weird thing, they can make an adapter. Like let's just make an adapter for like, hey, this is going to be at like bike parking lots. You're going to have a bunch of barrels. Get a barrel to Bosch, whatever. That's fine. Who cares? Like as long as there's like something that is going to be there, and like that's what people are thinking by default.
Yeah.
All right, Ray Living Good was glad that he was able to catch our live show today. Glad you could do that, Ray. That's a good time to tell everybody to like and subscribe to the channel, so that you get the little bell when we're podcasting, because we're not always at the exact same time because of location commitments and otherwise. So make sure you do that. And then last from Carl, dumb chargers, shove power sample, shove again. Okay. I'm okay
Man,
with
a
that.
few words.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back here in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast. See you next time, everyone.